The Detroit Lions are heading into this offseason with real confidence about what they have building inside the defensive line. And if you're a fan who loves physical football in the trenches, this is where the conversation starts. The pairing of Alim McNeill and Tyleik Williams is shaping up to be one of the most intriguing interior duos in the NFC, and the expectations inside the building are high. McNeill will be a full season removed from the torn ACL he suffered late in 2024, and that matters. Anyone who understands recovery timelines knows that the second year back is often when a player truly feels like himself again. Add to that the anticipated jump from Williams, the team's first-round pick in last year's NFL draft, and suddenly this interior front has serious upside. Williams is expected to take a big leap in production heading into his second season. That's not just optimism for the sake of it, it's a natural progression for a first-round talent adjusting to NFL speed and technique. The Lions believe his growth, combined with a fully healthy McNeill, can anchor the middle of the defense in a way that keeps Detroit among the league's best against the run. But here's where it gets interesting. The depth behind them is not set in stone. DJ Reader and Roy Lopez are both scheduled to hit free agency in March, and that creates uncertainty. Lopez, in particular, was a very good fit in Detroit's defensive scheme last season and could absolutely be a candidate to when his understanding of the system and the role he played in maintaining interior discipline should not be overlooked. Reader's pending free agency adds another layer of decision-making for the front office. Right now, the depth on the roster includes Levi Onwuzurike, Mekhi Wingo, and Chris Smith. Onwuzurike is coming off a lost 2025 season, so health is a key factor there. If he's fully healthy, the trio of McNeill, Williams, and Onwuzurike gives Detroit a solid foundation of 3 interior pieces. But if free agency doesn't break their way, that moderate need at defensive tackle could quickly become more pressing. And this year's draft class might come at the perfect time. This is considered a stacked defensive line class, including the interior defenders. Even if the best player available at no 17 overall isn't a defensive tackle, the depth in this class is strong enough that early contributors can be found well into day 2. That flexibility is crucial. It means Detroit doesn't have to force a pick, but can still address the position with real talent. Keep an eye on the top defensive tackles heading into the combine. Caden McDonald out of Ohio State stands at 6'3", 326 pounds, and is known as a strong, stout run defender. His production jumps off the page for an interior player, 65 tackles and 9.0 tackles for loss last season, while he has just 3.0 sacks in 34 college games. There's belief that with more refined technique, his pass rush impact could grow. Peter Woods from Clemson brings versatility and youth at just 20 years old. At 6'3", 310 pounds, he showed rare athleticism, even recording multiple games in 2025 with both a sack and a rushing touchdown, something no other player in college football accomplished. He's Clemson's first All-American defensive tackle since Christian Wilkins, and reportedly benched 225 pounds 34 times, which tells you about his raw strength. Lee Hunter from Texas Tech, at 6'3", 320 pounds with a massive 6'9" wingspan, offers positional flexibility along the interior. He's been dominant against the run and has recorded 31.0 tackles for loss over the last 3 seasons. There's real upside if his pass rush toolbox continues to expand. Then there's Banks, who missed most of the 2025 season due to injury. His medical evaluations at the combine will be critical, but he turned heads with a strong Senior Bowl week. His nimble feet and quick first step for his size suggest there could be more sack production ahead as he refines his technique and adds strength. Chrisen Miller from Georgia, standing 6'4", 310 pounds, lined up all over the defensive front. That versatility will appeal to teams. He had the 10th best run defense grade among all defensive linemen this past season, according to Pro Football Focus. Reinforcing what the tape shows, quick first step, disruptive presence, and don't sleep on Chris McClellan from Missouri as a combine sleeper. At 6'3", 315 pounds, he combines power and quickness, recording 48 tackles, 8.0 tackles for loss, and 6.0 sacks last season from the interior. The combine could elevate his stock significantly. Now here's the key context that makes all of this even more important. Detroit allowed the second fewest rushing yards after contact last season, just 1,077. Even more impressive, their 2.41 average yards allowed after contact ranked no 1 in the league. That doesn't happen by accident. That's interior discipline. That's gap control. That's physical dominance up front. The Lions' identity against the run is already elite, and the question becomes whether they double down on that strength or focus resources elsewhere. So as we look at McNeill's return to full health, Williams' expected second-year leap, the uncertainty of free agency with Rita and Lopez, and the depth of this draft class, the front office has real options, but also real decisions to make. Do you think the Lions should prioritize re-signing one of their veterans to stabilize the interior, or should they trust the draft class and invest in another young piece to build around McNeil and Williams for the long term. If you lean toward bringing back a veteran like Roy Lopez or DJ Reader, the argument is simple. Continuity matters. This defensive front has already proven it can control the line of scrimmage. When you finish a season allowing the second fewest rushing yards after contact in the entire league, just 1,077, and you rank no one in average yards allowed after contact at 2.41, that tells you your interior foundation is working. You're not guessing, you're not projecting, you're seeing production translate directly to results on Sundays. Resigning a familiar piece keeps the chemistry intact and protects you against uncertainty if an injury hits again. But if you go the other direction and trust the draft, there's logic there too. This class is deep, not just at the top, but into day 2 and even day 3. That flexibility allows Detroit to approach pick no 17 without forcing a defensive tackle selection. If the best player available isn't an interior defender, they can still circle back later and find someone capable of contributing early. That's how you build sustainable depth, layering talent instead of patching holes. And think about the timeline here. Ali McNeil entering a season fully removed from his ACL tear means you're likely to see a stronger, more explosive version of him anchoring the middle. Tyleik Williams stepping into year 2 is where you expect the game to slow down. That's when technique sharpens, when conditioning aligns with experience, and when production often spikes. If that leap happens, Detroit's starting interior duo could go from promising to dominant. Now factor in Levi Onwuzurike. His situation hinges entirely on health after a lost 2025 season. If he's fully available and productive, suddenly the need at defensive tackle truly stays moderate, just as it's currently viewed. McNeil, Williams, and Onwuzurike as your top 3 rotation pieces is a strong starting point. But if free agency pulls away depth and injuries linger, the tone of this conversation changes quickly. That's why the combine evaluations matter so much. Medical checks on players like Banks become critical. Athletic testing for prospects such as Caden McDonald, Peter Woods, Lee Hunter, Christian Miller, and Chris McClellan could shift draft boards dramatically. Detroit doesn't just need size, they already have size. They need the right blend of run discipline, leverage, technique, and upside as interior pass rushers. Because while the run defense numbers are elite, adding interior pressure consistently on passing downs is what can elevate this defense from very good to championship caliber. There's also a philosophical angle. This team's identity has been built on physicality, stopping the run, forcing opponents into predictable passing situations, and letting the rest of the defense attack when you dominate yards after contact. You're telling offenses that nothing comes easy. That mindset doesn't happen by accident. It's coached, it's drafted, and it's reinforced through roster decisions. So the front office is staring at a fork in the road that isn't about panic, it's about optimization. Do you secure what you know works and keep a veteran presence inside? Or do you inject another wave of young talent into a deep class and potentially raise the ceiling even higher over the next 3 to 4 seasons? The beauty of the situation is that this isn't a desperate need. It's strategic. It's about turning strength into dominance. And when you already lead the league in limiting yards after contact per rush, the margin between great and elite might come down to one smart move this offseason. Because here's the reality. Whichever path they choose will say a lot about how this organization views its competitive window right now. If they aggressively move to re-sign a veteran like Roy Lopez or DJ Reader, it signals that the priority is stability and maintaining the exact formula that already produced elite run defense numbers. It tells you they believe this roster, as constructed, is ready to compete at the highest level and that minimizing risk is the smarter move. On the other hand, if they allow one or both veterans to walk and lean into the draft class, that shows confidence in their scouting department and player development pipeline. It says they trust their ability to identify talent on day 2 or day 3 who can step into rotational snaps immediately while growing into something bigger. And remember, this isn't just any draft cycle. This defensive line group is widely viewed as deep, particularly on the interior. What makes this even more fascinating is how specific Detroit's defensive identity has become. The statistic about allowing just 2.41 yards after contact per rush, the best mark in the league, isn't just a number to celebrate, it's a blueprint. It reflects gap integrity, leverage, tackling efficiency, and interior disruption. When opposing running backs aren't falling forward consistently, that's a sign your defensive tackles are winning first contact. That's McNeil, that's Williams, that's the entire interior rotation doing its job snap after snap. Now imagine pairing that already elite run defense with improved interior pass rush production. We've talked about the upside of prospects like Caden McDonald developing more technique to unlock pass rush potential. We've discussed Peter Woods' rare athletic profile and versatility. We've highlighted Lee Hunter's length and disruptive upside. Christian Miller's ability to line up across the front, and Chris McClellan's blend of power and quickness. If even one of those archetypes translates at the next level in Detroit's scheme, the ripple effect could be significant. Interior pressure collapses the pocket. It forces quarterbacks off their launch point. It creates opportunities for edge rushers to clean up plays. And when you're already controlling the run, that complementary pressure becomes even more dangerous. Offenses can't stay balanced. They can't lean on the ground game. They're forced into predictable passing downs, and that's when a defense can truly dictate terms. The key variable in all of this remains health. Alan McNeil, being a full season removed from his ACL injury, is massive. History shows players often regain full explosiveness in that second year. Tyleik Williams, entering year 2, should naturally see improved processing speed and refined hand usage. Levi Onwuzurik's availability could either solidify the rotation or reopen the conversation about urgency at the position. That's why the term moderate need is so important here. This isn't a glaring hole. It's a decision point. It's about whether you reinforce depth to protect against uncertainty or push for higher upside through youth. And when you're drafting at no 17, you're in a range where multiple directions remain viable. You don't have to force a defensive tackle if the board doesn't fall that way. You can stay disciplined and trust that value will still be there later. Ultimately, this is about turning a strength into a defining trait. The Lions have already proven they can limit yards after contact better than anyone in the league. That's foundational level football. The next step is asking how much better this unit can realistically become with one more calculated move. And this is where the conversation really shifts from just roster mechanics to long-term vision. Because what the Lions decide to do along the interior defensive line isn't just about filling snaps, it's about defining how sustainable this defensive identity can be over the next several seasons. Let's slow this down and really think about it from a roster building standpoint. You already have a Alim McNeil positioned to return at full strength, finally removed from the shadow of that late 2024 ACL injury. You have Tyleik Williams entering that critical second season where first-round defensive linemen often make their biggest jump. You potentially have Levi Onwuzurik healthy again after losing the entire 2025 season. That trio alone gives you legitimate rotational strength if everything breaks right. Now add the context of the production we already discussed. The Lions didn't just have a good run defense, they were elite in one of the most telling categories. Yards after contact allowed, only 1,077 total rushing yards after contact surrendered all season, an average of 2.41 yards after contact per carry, best in the league. That statistic doesn't lie. It shows that when ball carriers met Detroit's front, the play was essentially over. That's trench dominance. So the challenge for the front office isn't fixing a weakness, it's protecting and potentially amplifying a strength. If they choose to resign